What you're about to watch is a masterclass in intellectual humiliation. Jordan Peterson, the man who built an empire convincing people he's some kind of philosophical genius, gets absolutely demolished by a college kid named Danny in under 3 minutes. This isn't your typical debate where both sides make decent points. This is a public execution disguised as a conversation. Peterson walks into this thinking he's going to school some naive atheist with his trademark word salad philosophy, but instead gets caught in the most basic logical trap imaginable. Watch as the supposed intellectual heavyweight gets outmaneuvered by someone who clearly learned actual logic instead of just reading self-help books and thinking they're profound. The second-hand embarrassment is so intense you'll want to pause the video, but trust me, it only gets worse for Peterson from here. The best part? Peterson realizes he's getting destroyed halfway through and tries to escape by pretending he doesn't know what debate he's in. It's like watching someone lose at chess and then claiming they thought they were playing checkers. Absolutely pathetic, absolutely hilarious, and absolutely necessary viewing for anyone who's ever wondered if the Peterson cult might have a point. Spoiler alert, they don't.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
You're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
And here we go. Peterson immediately steps into what's going to be his intellectual grave. His definition of worship is so laughably broad that it's essentially meaningless. Prioritize and sacrifice for, seriously? By this definition, literally everyone worships something. Your mom worships her garden because she prioritizes it and sacrifices time for it. Your dad worships his car because he prioritizes keeping it clean and sacrifices money for maintenance. Hell, Peterson himself worships his own voice because he clearly prioritizes talking and sacrifices other people's time to listen to his rambling nonsense. This is classic Peterson pseudo-intellectualism. Take a word with specific religious and cultural meaning, strip away all that meaning, and replace it with some vague definition that sounds deep but actually explains nothing. It's the intellectual equivalent of a magician's misdirection, except Peterson's not good enough to pull it off. Danny's about to expose this amateur hour philosophy for what it really is. Notice how Peterson tries to add that throwaway line about being able to flesh it out. He's already sensing this might be a problem, but he's too arrogant to realize he's about to get intellectually dismantled by someone who actually understands logic. The man who lectures people about being precise with language just gave a definition of worship that would make a first-year philosophy student cringe.
Okay, do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay, so do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
This is the moment Peterson realizes he's fucked, and watching him squirm is absolutely delicious. Danny just applied Peterson's own definition consistently and logically, and Peterson immediately tries to backtrack because he knows he's about to accuse Catholics of idol worship, which is going to piss off a huge chunk of his audience. But here's the beautiful thing, Danny doesn't let him escape. No, you just said it. Now you're taking it back. That's the sound of someone who actually understands how logical arguments work, calling out someone who just pretends to be logical. Peterson got caught trying to have it both ways. Give a broad definition that makes atheists look bad, but then narrow it down when it makes Christians look bad too. This is Peterson's entire grift in a nutshell. He makes sweeping, provocative statements that his fanboys eat up, but the moment someone with actual critical thinking skills examines those statements, they fall apart completely. He's not a philosopher, he's a motivational speaker who read a few psychology textbooks and thinks that makes him Aristotle. Danny just exposed this in about 30 seconds of actual logical reasoning. The panic in Peterson's voice is palpable. He's trying to modify his definition on the fly, but he's already committed to it on camera. This is what happens when you build your reputation on sounding smart rather than actually being smart. Eventually, you run into someone who can think clearly, and your whole intellectual house of cards comes tumbling down.
There's still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within the
There's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again.
Peterson is in full panic mode now, desperately trying to add complexity to his garbage definition to save face. Suddenly there's a hierarchy that wasn't mentioned before. Suddenly there are levels of worship. Suddenly everything is qualified and nuanced in ways that weren't part of his original confident assertion. This is textbook intellectual dishonesty. When your simple statement gets exposed as nonsense, just make it more complicated and hope nobody notices you're moving the goalposts. Mary's quite a ways up the hierarchy. What the hell does that even mean? Peterson is just throwing words together now, hoping something sticks. He's like a student who didn't study for the test and is just writing long, complicated sentences hoping to fool the teacher into thinking he knows what he's talking about. Except Danny isn't a teacher who has to be polite, he's someone who actually came prepared to think. The fact that Peterson immediately asks Danny to repeat his definition shows he's completely lost control of this conversation. He's the one who gave the definition, but now he's asking the other person to repeat it back to him because he's so flustered he can't remember what he said 30 seconds ago. This is supposed to be an intellectual heavyweight? The man can't even keep track of his own arguments for the length of a typical TikTok video.
Your definition of worship?
Attend to.
Attend to.
Prioritize.
Do Catholics
sacrifice for.
What do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now you're adding stuff to the definition, but your original definition.
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you familiar?
You just didn't understand it.
Danny is absolutely surgical here. He's methodically dismantling Peterson's attempts to weasel out of his own definition by pointing out exactly what Peterson is doing, adding stuff that wasn't there before. Now you're adding stuff to the definition. That's the sound of someone who actually understands logical consistency calling out someone who's just making it up as they go along. Peterson's response is peak pseudo-intellectual babble. You can attend to something trivially or you can attend to it deeply. This is meaningless word salad designed to confuse rather than clarify. He's throwing around terms like attend and deeply as if they mean something specific, but they're just smoke screens to hide the fact that his original definition was garbage. The beautiful irony is that Peterson, who has built his entire brand on telling people to be precise with language and to take responsibility for their words, is doing the exact opposite. He's being deliberately imprecise and refusing to take responsibility for the definition he confidently gave moments earlier. Danny is giving him a real-time lesson in intellectual integrity, and Peterson is failing spectacularly.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
how do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
Danny is absolutely brilliant here. He's not letting Peterson escape through vague definitions, so he's drilling down into specific religious doctrine to expose Peterson's hypocrisy. Danny knows exactly what he's doing. He's setting up Peterson to either admit Catholics worship Mary according to his own definition, or to expose that his definition is complete garbage. Why are you asking me? Because you're a Christian. Danny is calling Peterson out on his own game. Peterson wants to make broad claims about what religious people do and don't worship, but when pressed for specifics about his own tradition, he tries to deflect. This is classic Peterson behavior, make sweeping generalizations about other people's beliefs while refusing to apply the same scrutiny to his own. The fact that Danny is asking Peterson about Catholic doctrine shows he actually understands the implications of Peterson's argument better than Peterson does. If Peterson's definition of worship is correct, then Catholics are guilty of idolatry, which is a huge theological problem for Christianity. Danny is forcing Peterson to confront the logical consequences of his own words, and Peterson is squirming because he knows he's trapped himself.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
This is where Peterson completely loses it. Danny calls him out for not knowing where he is, literally asking if Peterson knows what debate he's in, and Peterson's response is to demand Danny stop being a smartass. The irony is absolutely staggering. Peterson is the one who came in here making confident assertions about atheist worship, but now he's acting confused about the basic premise of the conversation he agreed to have. Danny's question, "You don't know where you are right now?" is perfectly legitimate. Peterson seems genuinely confused about whether this is a Christian versus atheist debate, which suggests he either didn't prepare for this discussion or he's so flustered by Danny's logical dismantling that he's lost track of the basic context. Either way, it's not a good look for someone who presents himself as an intellectual heavyweight. The fact that Peterson considers this straightforward question to be smartass behavior tells you everything you need to know about his intellectual character. Danny wasn't being a smartass, he was pointing out that Peterson seemed confused about the basic parameters of their discussion. But Peterson apparently thinks that holding him accountable to basic awareness of his surroundings is somehow unfair or disrespectful.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with.
And here's the final meltdown. Danny realizes that Peterson has been playing games this entire time, refusing to identify as a Christian while trying to attack atheists, and his response is absolutely devastating. "You're really quite nothing, right?" This is surgical precision. Danny is pointing out that Peterson wants to have it both ways, act like some kind of Christian defender while refusing to actually commit to being a Christian himself. The brilliance of Danny's attack here is that he's exposing Peterson's fundamental intellectual cowardice. Peterson came in here presumably to defend Christian ideas against atheist criticism, but when pressed to actually identify as a Christian, he refuses. So what is he exactly? He's just a guy who wants to sound important while avoiding any actual commitment to the positions he's defending. Peterson's response, "I'm done with him," shows he's been completely broken by this exchange. This is the intellectual courage of someone who's spent too many years in echo chambers where people treat his rambling as profound wisdom. The moment he encounters someone who can actually think clearly and call out his games, he crumbles completely. Danny's suggestion that Peterson might be in the wrong debate is devastating because it highlights exactly what happened here. Peterson clearly expected this to be some kind of softball discussion where he could pontificate about atheist worship without anyone challenging his basic assumptions or asking him to commit to any actual positions. Instead, he ran into someone who actually understands logic and got exposed as the pseudo-intellectual fraud he really is.
Tim.
What you just witnessed wasn't just a debate, it was a public autopsy of Peterson's entire intellectual brand. In less than 3 minutes, a college kid managed to expose what critics have been pointing out for years. Jordan Peterson is a fraud who built his reputation on impressive-sounding nonsense that falls apart the moment someone with actual critical thinking skills examines it. Peterson's entire strategy here was textbook pseudo-intellectual manipulation. Start with a provocative claim about atheists worshipping things, give a definition so broad it's meaningless, then hope nobody notices the logical problems. It's the same strategy he uses in his books and lectures, make sweeping statements that sound profound to people who don't think too deeply, but crumble under any serious scrutiny. The beautiful thing about Danny's approach is that he didn't need to attack Peterson personally or get into complex theological arguments. He simply applied Peterson's own definition consistently and watched Peterson tie himself in knots trying to escape the logical consequences of his own words. This is how you deal with pseudo-intellectuals. You don't need to match their complexity, you just need to demand logical consistency. Peterson's meltdown reveals everything you need to know about his intellectual character. This is not how confident intellectuals behave when their ideas are challenged. This is how frauds behave when they're exposed. The irony is that Peterson has built his entire brand on telling people to take responsibility for their words and actions, but when his own words create logical problems, he immediately tries to escape responsibility by adding qualifications and complexity that weren't there before. He's the living embodiment of the intellectual cowardice he claims to oppose. But perhaps the most damning aspect of this entire exchange is how it reveals the poverty of Peterson's thinking. His definition of worship is so vague that it applies to virtually everything humans do, which means it explains nothing. This is typical Peterson. He takes concepts with specific, meaningful definitions and renders them meaningless through overgeneralization. He's not clarifying ideas, he's destroying them. The fact that Peterson couldn't handle 3 minutes of logical questioning from a college student should tell you everything you need to know about the quality of his ideas. If your philosophy can't survive contact with basic logical reasoning, then it's not philosophy, it's just therapy for people who want to feel smart without doing the work of actually thinking clearly. Danny did something here that Peterson's academic critics have been trying to do for years. He exposed Peterson's intellectual emptiness in language that anyone can understand. No advanced degrees required, no complex theoretical frameworks needed, just basic logical consistency applied to Peterson's own words. The emperor has no clothes, and sometimes it takes a kid to point out the obvious. The most satisfying part of this entire exchange is watching Peterson realize in real time that he's been caught. You can see the moment he understands that Danny isn't going to let him escape with his usual word salad tricks. The panic in his voice, the desperate attempts to change the subject, the final tantrum, it's all the behavior of someone who knows they've been exposed as a fraud. This is what happens when Peterson encounters someone who actually learned logic instead of just reading self-help books and thinking they're profound. Danny represents everything Peterson pretends to be: intellectually curious, logically consistent, and willing to follow arguments wherever they lead. Peterson, by contrast, is revealed as exactly what his critics have always said he is: a motivational speaker who stumbled into philosophy and convinced people his confusion was complexity. The broader lesson here is about the importance of intellectual honesty. Peterson built his career on the idea that he's some kind of rigorous thinker, but when faced with actual rigorous thinking, he completely collapsed. Danny didn't need to be mean or personal, he just needed to be logical. That's all it took to destroy years of carefully constructed intellectual reputation. In the end, this exchange perfectly captures the difference between real intellectual work and Peterson's brand of pseudo-intellectual performance. Real thinking is hard, requires consistency, and demands that you follow logic even when it leads to uncomfortable conclusions. Peterson's approach is to sound impressive while avoiding the hard work of actually thinking clearly. Danny just demonstrated which approach actually works when the rubber meets the road. The fact that Peterson's response to being intellectually outmaneuvered by a college student was to throw a tantrum tells you everything you need to know about the intellectual maturity of the man who's been lecturing the world about taking responsibility and facing hard truths. This is why Peterson's brand of pseudo-intellectualism is so dangerous. It convinces people that impressive-sounding nonsense is the same thing as actual thinking. Danny just provided a master class in the difference between the two, and Peterson failed the test so spectacularly that he had to flee the scene. The student became the teacher, and the supposed intellectual got schooled by someone who actually understands how logic works. The emperor has no clothes, and Danny just provided the mirror.